After dipping my toes in the world of hybrid cloth pads recently, I found myself eager to give glass pads a shot. Skypad, Pulsar Superglide, Wraith Cosmic glass pads are all surging in popularity these days. Recently, Razer decided to throw their hat in the ring with a brand new glass pad, so today I'm going to take a look at the Atlas, the brand new glass pad from Razer. Razer has long had some form of hard pad on the market, dating back almost 20 years to products like the Exact Mat, to these days offering pads like the Sphex or the Akari, but glass pads are somewhat new to the world of gaming. Razer is sort of the first of the mainstream companies to release a glass pad like this. Obviously, companies like Skypad have been at it for quite a while, and it seems as if their buzz is starting to reach a critical mass if Razer is starting to get in on the action. Now, the Razer Atlas comes in at about $100, which is a lot for a mouse mat, but it technically isn't out of line for a glass pad. Skypad's XL pad will get you for about $120. Pulsar's Superglide is going for $95, so it's certainly within the right price range for a glass pad. Being less prone to things like stains and fabric wear, it's likely a glass pad will last you quite a bit longer than a traditional pad would. It's worth noting that I picked mine up locally from a MicroCenter. It seems like both MicroCenter and Best Buy are keeping this pad in stock at a good portion of their stores. Normally, this wouldn't make a huge difference, but in the case of a glass pad, I've got to imagine that if any product is going to be prone to breaking, it's going to be a big sheet of glass. It's probably not a big deal to everyone, but I'm sure there are those out there that are just not wanting to take the risk of having a big sheet of glass shipped around the country. So the option of walking into a store and picking one up is always nice. Sizing for the pad comes in at 450 millimeters by 400 millimeters. I prefer a fully square pad, but the size is pretty good even for a low sense player like me, although I do find myself having to bump my sensitivity back up just a hair to make sure that I'm not running to the edge of the pad the way I would with a cloth pad. A cloth pad can be pretty forgiving if you accidentally get too close to the edge, but running off the edge on a glass pad can be super jarring and do quite a bit to mess up your aim. Being a glass pad, the first thing that's very noticeable about it is the weight. It's obviously going to be way heavier than any cloth pad you use, although it weirdly is pretty close in weight to my Razer Goliathus 3XL mat. It's glass, so obviously it's got some heft to it, but it isn't like super heavy. It just feels like a nice solid pad. The surface is textured, but it still feels smooth to the touch. If I had to compare it to something, I'd call it like a frosted glass feel. It's quiet too. I expected it to be loud and scratchy like most of my old hard pads, but I hardly notice it when I flick it. Setting my mouse down is a bit louder than what you would get with a cloth pad, obviously, but it isn't that noticeable. My wife is one of those people that can't stand like scratchy sounds, and old plastic style pads used to drive her nuts. One of the first things I did when I brought it home was go through a sound test with her, and it didn't seem to bother her. So while it certainly isn't as quiet as a soft cloth pad, when I'm wearing headphones, I really don't notice it the way I would with standard hard acrylic-based pads. The base is quite a bit sturdier than some other glass pads we've seen. It's a full rubber base that covers the entirety of the bottom of the pad and makes for a really solid connection to your desk. And given how heavy it is, it means you have to try really hard if you want to accidentally move this pad. The edges are rounded off really nicely, and the textured coating stops right at the edge, giving you this really smooth feeling that I liked. And while I didn't notice the edges any more than I would on a cloth pad, given that it is glass, if you lay your arm down at all, a sleeve is pretty much necessary. I tried playing a bit without one, and it was kind of a no-go for me. I tend to play with a sleeve no matter what, so it's not a huge issue for me. But if you don't like wearing a sleeve, then that's something to keep in mind. I'm kind of a slow pad kind of guy, or at least I was, so I was pretty sure that this wasn't going to be a great fit for me. But I was pretty surprised on how slow it was. It's not a slow pad, of course. It's just as fast as I thought it would be. But I had more control than I thought. It's certainly lacking in any kind of stopping power, though. It's fast, of course, but I found myself really enjoying using it in games like Valorant and CSGO, or games where you're doing a lot of swiping and turning, typically battle royales like Fortnite or Apex, were way more difficult to get control of my aim with constant movement. Things like holding angles in Valorant was particularly enjoyable with this pad due to quickly being able to swap between pre-aimed shots. Spending time in aim labs, I found scenarios like one wall 6 targets to be pretty enjoyable, but tracking scenarios were just incredibly jittery for me. I was pretty surprised at how much I enjoyed using this. I thought it was going to be something that just was too fast for me and something I really didn't like playing with at all. But I found myself really enjoying it in games that didn't really require a lot of movement. So games like Valorant or CSGO, and even spending a lot of time in aim labs was a lot of fun, but Battle Royales, generally speaking, a lot of run and gun stuff like Call of Duty was just too hectic. Maybe if I put some more time into playing with it, I might get more used to it, but I found myself just reverting back to my old favorites after a few games. From a purely aesthetic point, the Razer Atlas looks really sexy on your desk, and I suppose if you're not really into gaming, it might be worth it to buy a pad simply for the looks, but it's not something I'm interested in doing. I don't think I'll be jumping on the glass pad bandwagon right now, but maybe after some time with them, who knows. If you're a speed freak and you're not getting what you want out of those hybrid pads, you might really love using a glass pad. And I think the fact that Razer is finally jumping into the mix shows that glass pads are probably only going to get more popular. And I'm really interested to see where things go. Pulsar already has a full desk pad that I can't believe is a real thing, but I'll certainly be keeping an eye out for any interesting glass pads that come along. That's it for today. Please, if you like this video, drop a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to me, and I will see you in the next one.